Hey, it's Thanksgiving weekend, and it's a good time for me to do another update on the project. It's late November. It's been about 2 weeks since my last project, and have made some excellent progress. So let's jump right in it, because to start with, I've got a demo. So in the previous update, I talked about OpenBazaar and how important it's going to be going forward, and how it accelerates the software development because I'll be able to leverage their technology for conducting transactions instead of developing all that stuff myself. So let me give you a demo of how that's going to work. Um, let's jump right into the marketplace. So this, I'm going to pick up where I left off a couple updates ago, where I demoed how to connect Raspberry Pi to the marketplace. So here is that same marketplace. We're on this Own Devices tab, and I've got the Raspberry Pi sitting next to me, and it's connected to the server. It's sending updates every 2 minutes. It says, "Hey, I'm here. I'm connected. Here's the remote connection information I would need if I wanted to connect to it." But what I want to show you is this Submit to Market button. But first, let me show you. Let's see. So this is OpenBazaar. This is the OpenBazaar application, and you can see right here it says beta test mode. So I'm actually using the Bitcoin test network, and that's letting me. There's something called the Bitcoin faucet where you can get these. So the test net's not using real Bitcoin. It's like a parallel network where you can do testing and stuff on the Bitcoin network without using real Bitcoins. And they have these things called faucets, or websites that you can go to and request coins. And actually, a little surprised. I thought I had some things listed here, but it doesn't look like I have any listings at the moment. Just make sure I'm on the right. Yeah, I'm on the right server. Okay, I'm not sure where my listings went. Oh, so here we go. Here's the store. Okay, so here's the store. I have this example listing, and I have this other test digital product that I created. So these are the two listings in my OpenBazaar store. So what I just completed is, if you click this button and this says connected, then this button will be enabled, and you can click it. And if you click it, it'll create a listing on the OpenBazaar store. So if I click that, it now says remove from market, and if I refresh my store, I'll see a new listing. There's my new listing. If I click on it, here's a GUID. This is the GUID that is associated, yeah, right here. It's just with the device. So these are just stock photos that I grabbed, and a little bit of a description and a listing price. So this is the idea: is you would register your device with the P2P VPS marketplace, and if it's connected, you'd be able to submit it to the market, and then it would be on OpenBazaar, and then people could then browse this OpenBazaar store and purchase your listing. So, for example, if I was to buy now, this isn't in place, but if I was to go through this purchase, I could put in my email, and the idea is after purchasing it, I would get emailed this login information to log into the device, and the agreement would be for a set amount of time, probably a month, though for testing purposes I'm probably just going to make it a day or an hour once I get this to a point where people can play with it remotely. And then of course I can also hit remove from market, and I'm still working on the UI, but if I refresh the page and go back, you can see the button changed, and now if I refresh this, you can see the listing disappeared. So that's what I've got so far, which took an amazing amount of work, but now that I have this, it's just user interface development is all that's left for me right now. So I'm just going to make this work a little bit better. And but that's basically the demo. I can add and create listings remotely. So let me show you a little bit more about the software stack and sort of what's going on behind the scenes of that demo I just showed you. So that brings me to the Docker stack. I'm going to show you that right now. So this is the Docker stack. This is essentially the P2P VPS.net server that I am running right now, and this is the software that I have up on GitHub. So actually, let me show you exactly what I mean. So all the software for P2P VPS I'm releasing under the RPI-OVN organization, and I'll talk about RPI-OVN on another time. But the main software, here's the client software. So it's GitHub/RPI-OVN. The client software, this is what runs on the Raspberry Pi. The server, that's what runs, the server, this marketplace that we're looking at. And then I just added this repository, which is Docker Connect CMS P2P VPS. This is a fork of the Docker Connect CMS repo, and what it is it's a series of Docker containers that let you run Connect CMS inside Docker. If you've never heard of Docker, it's a virtualization technology. It's a new virtualization technology. It lets you put your software in a container and have a reproducible environment. So if I wrote software for a Docker container that ran on my computer, I could safely assume that I can give you the same code and you can run it on a Docker container on any computer, and it'll run the same. And that's the whole point of Docker. It lets you sort of contain the components of your software stack and deploy them reliably. So this is kind of what it looks like. Is on the lowest level is the Linux operating system that's running, and then inside, using Docker Compose, I have all these Docker containers running in parallel. I've got Connect CMS, which handles the website. So that's let's see, it's not this part. It's if I go to P2P, so everything you see here, this is the website. That's Connect CMS, and then MongoDB is running and talking to Connect CMS, and that's where all the database, like the content and your user profile and all the information on your device, everything is stored in MongoDB, and it talks to Connect CMS. And then, of course, there's the OpenBazaar server running also inside of a Docker container, and the SSH server, which lets the client do the reverse SSH tunneling, which lets me connect to it remotely. And then these two don't exist yet. And then there's a typo here that should say local tunnel. Local tunnel. So SSH is what's going to give command line access to the Raspberry Pis. Local tunnel is going to serve web pages up on HTTP and HTTPS from the Raspberry Pi. So you'll be able to, just like here, let me show you in the marketplace. This information is what you need to log into the device remotely. So you go to p2pvps.net, port 6005, use this login and this password, and that gives you shell access to the Raspberry Pi device that is going to be up there for rent. You'll also be able to serve web pages at some subdomain.p2pvps.net, and they'll be up there, port 80 for HTTP and port 443 for encrypted HTTP. And so those are two more packages that are going to come, and they will, when they do come, they will show up in this repository right here. This is really the main repository. This P2P VPS server, this is really this chunk right here. And so that lives inside of this Docker Compose collection, and that all lives here in this repository. This is the collection of Docker containers, and then I use Docker Compose to compose them, to orchestrate everything. And then at the top is Nginx, and this, some people prefer to run Nginx inside of a Docker container as well. I prefer to run it outside of Docker containers. And so anything coming in from the internet, if you think of the internet's like up top here, it's going to talk to Nginx first, and then Nginx is going to route the information to one of these Docker containers depending on the situation. And so that's kind of a visual of what's going on the server and how all the things are arranged and how they talk to one another. So that's the Docker stack. If you're a developer, this is kind of important because the P2P VPS server software is going to be sort of a potpourri of many software packages, and I'm going to be using Docker and Docker Compose to orchestrate everything. And if you've never used it before, don't be intimidated by this, because this is what makes it easier to use. When I launch this in version 1.0, you'll be able to just bring up your Linux command line, clone this repository, and then with one command, docker compose up, it will launch all these different software packages and get them talking to one another, and it'll be pretty slick when I release version 1.0. So the purpose of this is just to give people sort of communicate my vision to people of where I'm going, what the ultimate goal is. It'll look like this. So I also wanted to talk about the Slack channel. I created a Slack channel because I am getting closer and closer to an alpha release, and then once I do, I will start spending less time on development and more time on drumming up interest. And I think the Slack channel is going to be pretty important for communication and for drumming up that interest with developers. So if you go to p2pvps.org, you can see our patron page, the GitHub repository, and now there's this new button for the Slack channel. And I encourage you to click it and join in here and say hi. And this is going to be, at least in the short term, the primary form of communication. So if you want to get a hold of me, if you have questions, if you want to be a tester, if you want to be a developer, definitely log in here and say hi. Okay, so next steps. That pretty much brings us up to date with where I'm at with the project. So the next steps are I need to update the specifications. I need to fix the little user interface bug that I was showing you here with this button. That needs to be a little more reliable. And then I need to create the listing manager, and I didn't really so let me talk about the specifications. I've kind of been working on those, and they're definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen them. So if you go to P2P VPS server on GitHub, I believe there is a link in here to the specifications. I'm sure there is, but basically you can go to the specifications directory, and this is where a lot of the high-level documentation lives. So if you haven't checked it out, this is definitely the place to start. And in fact, I believe I created an about page that points there. Yeah, right here. But either way, this is where you want to go. So I've got this high-level overview, and then it starts drilling down into the different major subcomponents of P2P VPS. So if you want to understand sort of what's going on, why it's doing what it's doing, this is where that information is going to live. So I need to update that with these new changes I made for OpenBazaar. And the listing manager is really the last piece of the puzzle. So you can see it's this block here, and that's just something sort of I figured out today with getting those listings working. I think I've also been playing with email, but basically the listing manager is going to be its own little Node.js application, and its job is going to be to pull the OpenBazaar server for notifications, so that if somebody if a purchase order comes through, there's the way a purchase happens on OpenBazaar is there's 4 stages. The buyer pays for something. There's an acceptance that happens if the store's offline, but it happens automatically if the store's online, and I plan on leaving the server online all the time. And then there's this fulfilled stage where the server has to, or the seller has to, like, fulfill the order or mark it as fulfilled. And so that's where the listing manager is going to come in. Is it's going to pull the server for notifications that someone purchased a listing, and then it's going to fill in it's going to hit that, basically submit an API endpoint to mark it as fulfilled, and at the same time it'll send the login and password info, this information right here, to the renter. This is the information the renter is going to need to access the rented device. So that'll be what one job, half of the job of the listing manager. The other half the job of the listing manager is going to be pulling all the listings and checking the timestamps. What basically it's this timestamp here. So every 2 minutes, the device checks in with the server just to let it know that it's still connected to the internet. It's still ready and available for renters. And if it doesn't check in within like 10 or 15 minutes, this will go red. It'll say disconnected. And if someone's got an active listing on OpenBazaar, then the listing manager needs to pull that listing off. Or if someone's actively renting the device and it goes offline, then it needs to issue a refund for the time that it was supposed to be available for and it's not. And that's all possible through OpenBazaar doing refunds. So that's basically the job of this listing manager. So that's again kind of the next thing, and like I said, that's going to be the last major piece of the puzzle, and then I'll start to be able to put stuff together. So my plan is once I hit that and get that done, maybe in a month is what I'm guessing, then I'll get P2P VPS.net going. Where's that? This going. Like right now, I'm really the only one who can log into the marketplace. I mean, you can log into the marketplace and do your own thing too, but I'm hoping to get several devices up on the marketplace for rent, maybe for only an hour at a time, just for demo purposes, so that people can actually like go in here, create an account, shop the marketplace, open the store up in OpenBazaar, buy a listing with Bitcoin test coins, and just see and play with the whole workflow, and start getting feedback and start getting excited. I don't think I'm gonna. It's gonna be an uphill battle getting people excited about this project until they can actually like click on buttons and play with things. And so I'm getting very close to that point. So that pretty much wraps up this update. Like I said, it's late November. It's November 24th. And I'll do another update in a couple weeks, and hopefully in 2 weeks my goal is to have the user interface finished and at least sort of a rough draft of the listing manager working, and then I'll see where I'm at with being able to open up the .NET server, test server, to the general public and encourage people to register their Raspberry Pis, rent out my test Raspberry Pis, and just sort of play with it a little bit heavier. So check back then.